Operation Condor was a campaign of political repression and state terror involving intelligence operations and assassination of opponents, which started in 1968 and was officially implemented in 1975 by the right-wing dictatorships of the southern cone of South America. The program was intended to eradicate communist or Soviet influence and ideas, and to suppress active or potential opposition movements against the participating governments. Due to its clandestine nature, the precise number of deaths directly attributable to Operation Condor is highly disputed. Some estimates are that at least 60,000 deaths can be attributed to Condor, and possibly more. Victims included dissidents and leftists, union and peasant leaders, priests and nuns, students and teachers, intellectuals and suspected guerrillas. Condor's key members were the governments in Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia and Brazil. The United States government provided technical support and supplied military aid to the participants until at least 1978, and again after Republican Ronald Reagan became president in 1981. Such support was frequently routed through the Central Intelligence Agency. Ecuador and Peru later joined the operation in more peripheral roles. These efforts, such as Operation Charlie, supported the local juntas in their anti-communist repression. Antecedents: Operation Condor, which took place in the context of the Cold War between Western societies and the Soviet Union and its Eastern Bloc, had the tacit approval of the United States. In 1968, U.S. General Robert W. Porter stated that in order to facilitate the coordinated employment of internal security forces within and among Latin American countries, we are endeavoring to foster inter-service and regional cooperation by assisting in the organization of integrated command and control centers, the establishment of common operating procedures, and the conduct of joint and combined training exercises. Condor was part of this effort, according to American historian Patrice Macheri, based on formerly secret CIA documents from 1976. In the 1960s and early 1970s, plans were developed among international security officials at the U.S. Army School of the Americas and the Conference of American Armies to deal with perceived threats in South America from political dissidents. A declassified CIA document dated the 23rd of June 1976 explains that, in early 1974, security officials from Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay and Bolivia met in Buenos Aires to prepare coordinated actions against subversive targets. Condor was an operation similar to Operation Gladio, the strategy of tension used in Italy in the 1970s, of which Licio Guethli was a member. The program was developed following a series of government coups d'état by military groups, primarily in the 1970s. General Alfredo Stroessner took control of Paraguay in 1954. The Brazilian military overthrew the President João Goulart in 1964. General Hugo Banzer took power in Bolivia in 1971 through a series of coups. A civic-military dictatorship seized power in Uruguay on the 27th of June 1973. Forces loyal to General Augusto Pinochet bombed the presidential palace in Chile on the 11th of September 1973, overthrowing democratically elected President Salvador Allende. A military junta headed by General Jorge Rafael Videla seized power in Argentina on the 24th of March 1976. According to American author, journalist and educator A. J. Languth, the organization of the first meetings between Argentinian and Uruguayan security officials concerning the watching of political refugees in these countries can be attributed to the CIA, as well as its participation as intermediary in the Argentinian, Uruguayan and Brazilian death squads meetings. History. Cooperation among various security services had existed prior to the creation of Operation Condor, with the aim of eliminating Marxist subversion. During the Conference of American Armies held in Caracas on 3 September 1973, Brazilian General Brenner Borges Fortes, head of the Brazilian Army, proposed to extend the exchange of information between various services in order to struggle against subversion. In March 1974, representatives of the police forces of Chile, Uruguay and Bolivia met with Alberto Villa, deputy chief of the Argentine Federal Police and co-founder of the AAA Death Squad, to implement cooperation guidelines. The goal was to destroy the subversive threat represented by the presence of thousands of political exiles in Argentina. In August 1974, the corpses of Bolivian refugees were found in garbage dumps in Buenos Aires. In 2007, Patrice Macheri also confirmed the abduction and torture during this period of Chilean and Uruguayan refugees who were living in Buenos Aires, based on newly declassified CIA documents dated June 1976. On 25 November 1975, leaders of the military intelligence services of Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Paraguay, and Uruguay met with Manuel Contreras, chief of DINA, in Santiago de Chile, officially creating the Plan Condor. According to French journalist Marie-Monique Robin, author of Escadrons de la Mort, L'École Française, General Rivero, intelligence officer of the Argentine Armed Forces and former student at the French, developed the concept of Operation Condor, based on the government's perception of threats. Officially, the targets were armed groups, but the governments broadened their attacks against all kinds of political opponents, including the families and others. As reported by the Valish Commission, the Argentine Dirty War, for example, which resulted in approximately 30,000 victims according to most estimates, kidnapped, tortured and killed many trade unionists, relatives of activists, social activists such as founders of the Mothers of the Plaza de Mayo, nuns, university professors, etc. From 1976 onwards, the Chilean DINA and its Argentine counterpart, SIDE, were the operation's frontline troops. The infamous death flights, theorized in Argentina by Luis Maria Mendia, and previously used during the Algerian War by French forces, were widely used. Government forces took victims by plane or helicopter out to sea, dropping them to the deaths and planned disappearances. In late 1977, due to unusual storms, numerous corpses washed up on beaches south of Buenos Aires, producing evidence of some of the government's victims. There were also hundreds of cases of babies and children being taken from mothers in prison who had been kidnapped and later disappeared. The children were given in illegal adoptions to military families and associates of the regime. Revelations about Condor. The dictatorships and their intelligence services were responsible for tens of thousands of killed and missing people in the period between 1975 and 1985. Analyzing the political repression in the region during that decade, Brazilian journalist Nilson Mariano estimates the number of killed and missing people as 2,000 in Paraguay, 3,196 in Chile, 297 in Uruguay, 366 in Brazil, and 30,000 in Argentina. According to John Henry Coatsworth, a historian historian of Latin America and the provost of Columbia University. The number of victims in Latin America alone far surpassed that of the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc during the period 1960 to 1990. On the 22nd of December 1992, torture victim Martin Almada and José Agustín Fernández, a Paraguayan judge, visited a police station in the Lambaré suburb of Asunción to look for files on a former political prisoner. They found what became known as the Archives of Terror, documenting the fates of thousands of Latin Americans' political prisoners, who were secretly kidnapped, tortured and killed by the security services of Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Paraguay and Uruguay. The archive has a total of 60,000 documents weighing 4 tons and comprising 593,000 microfilmed pages. Southern Cone Operation Condor resulted in up to 50,000 killed, 30,000 disappeared, and 400,000 arrested and imprisoned. Some of these countries have relied on evidence in the archives to prosecute former military officers. According to these archives, other countries, such as Peru, cooperated by providing intelligence information in response to requests from the security services of the Southern Cone nations. While Peru had no representatives at the secret November 1975 meeting in Santiago de Chile, there is evidence of its involvement. For instance, as late as June 1980, Peru was known to have collaborated with Argentine agents of 601 Intelligence Battalion in the kidnapping, torture and disappearance of a group of Montoneros living in exile in Lima. The Terror archives also revealed a degree of cooperation by Colombia and Venezuela. A Colombian paramilitary organization known as Alianza Americana Anticomunista may have cooperated with Operation Condor. Brazil signed the agreement later, but refused to engage in actions outside Latin America. Mexico, together with Costa Rica, Canada, France, the UK, Spain and Sweden, received many people fleeing as refugees from the terror regimes. Operation Condor officially ended when Argentina ousted the military dictatorship in 1983 and restored democracy.